Hello everyone, my name is Keanu Reeves. You might know me as my role as John Wick, or my role in The Matrix, or my role as Shadow the Hedgehog from Sonic. And I'm here to talk to you about a series that has impacted me deeply and has stayed with me ever since ever since I finished it. It has stayed with me. It has kept me up late, and it has changed the way that I think about things. It's a very introspective series that you don't see often, and it's an anime series or a manga series uh, written by Urasawa Naoki, and its name is Monster. And I want to talk to you about it because there's just so many themes and questions raised in the series, and not all of it is explained. And I feel like that was intentional because it wanted you to think for yourself. It didn't want to answer the questions for you. It wanted you to think about what your answer is and what you got from the story, how you perceive the characters and the events. It's also a nice crime thriller, which I love. It's realistic, it's gritty, it's dark, it's different than other animes. It's not flashy, it doesn't use any magic, there's no magic involved. And even the ending is left ambiguous and really makes you think about how you interpret the, the main villain. But before I discuss the ending, I would like to speak about how the story starts, its characters, what just makes it stand out to me, amongst other things, and just all of the themes and questions it raises. So the anime, at least, yeah, for me, as I watch the anime, I haven't read the manga yet, but it starts with a Bible verse, which reads, "And I saw the beast rising out from the sea, having 10 horns and 11 heads, and on its horns were 10 diadems, and on its heads were blasphemous names. And the dragon gave it power, and his throne, and great authority. They worshipped the dragon, for he had given authority to the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, 'Who is like the beast, and who can fight against it?'" Revelations 13, verses 1 to 4. So, this Bible verse is huge foreshadowing for the ending and the rest of the series. And I will come back to it when I can while talking about the series. So, what makes it stand out to me compared to any other show? One is its realism and its character design, its areas, like how it portrays the areas. As the story takes place in Germany, pretty much right after World War II, and also some places around it, like the Czech Republic. Its areas are based off of real areas that you can visit in real life, and its character designs are simplistic. You can find anyone that looks like the characters in this series, which I think makes it a really easy anime to have a live action adaptation of, which is pretty hard to do for anime since they're all so like flashy and it's like hard to get the effects right. But in Monster, there are no flashy effects. It's just real. You can recreate this in real life, even if the story is like pretty crazy to actually happen in real life. It feels like it could. I like how the timeline and like of this, like the setting time of the series affects the story, since it's set after World War II in Germany. I won't be touching on the story a lot, except for the when I'm talking about the themes, and I have to tell you what the story is. But I heavily recommend you watch this series because one, I want more people to be exposed to this because it's just such a good series. But two, it might change your way of thinking because it certainly did for me. Anyways, a argument that is very prevalent in this series is the nurture versus nature argument, which is pointed against the antagonist. And I think the story mainly sides with the nurture argument, as we learn later on that the main character, the main antagonist, has so much trauma and so many things that shaped him to be, the monster that he is now. But I will get into that later, okay? Also, the way the story goes, its pacing with some episodic episodes that I guess feel like standalone stories, but they still add into the narrative and answers some questions being that might be in your head. And it also has some long drawn out arcs that focus mainly on story, which I love. Earlier on, there's more episodic episodes, but after that, it's mostly arcs. And I really like that because arcs have a higher intensity, or what's it called? Yeah, pretty much they have a higher intensity in them. And as the story goes on, the stakes are higher as we learn more about the antagonist and his plans changing. It feels right to have less and less happy episodes and more serious episodes. And I like how each arc and each episodic episode drip feeds you a bit of information, just enough to give you hooked. And that's why I got hooked. That's why I felt so empty inside after finishing this series, because I wanted more. This is the only series I've watched or read by Urasawa, and it makes me want to see more, but I haven't had the time, so I go. So about the characters, I'm going to mainly discuss the main character and the antagonist because I don't have a lot of time. But so the main character is Tenma. He's a Japanese neurosurgeon who is living in Germany, and he's pretty much the complete opposite of the antagonist, Johan. He has dark hair. He's an immigrant. And I'm not just saying this because I'm racist. I'm not racist. Okay, I shouldn't be adding that. I'm gonna crop that out. I'm gonna redo this, okay? The main character is Tenma. He's the complete opposite of Johan, the antagonist. And it's in belief. His belief is that all humans are born the same. All lives are equal. And he is also pretty much the opposite in appearance. And how he is treated as a person, as Johan Tenma is treated like a criminal pretty much the entirety of the show. And Johan, Tenma is like the center of attention on the news because the police are looking for him. He is a criminal in their eyes, while Johan is invisible, pretty much. Some people just don't believe he exists. He also not really shares, but he is the opposite of Tenma's belief, as he believes that the only time people are equal are in death. And that's a very iconic quote he drops at the end. And his beliefs are pretty much just shaped by his trauma as a kid. He's nurtured to be this monster that he is, and at the end when his hospital bed is left empty, you're wondering, is he going to continue to spread evil, or is he going to become a new person? Is he leaving to better himself, or is he leaving to continue what he started? Johan is a manipulator. he doesn't fight. You never see him fighting like in other animes, but he uses his words, his cunning, his charm to make people do what he wants. It is shown in the show multiple times that he has like this control over people, like he can just make them into a puppet if he wanted to. And yeah, that's pretty scary. He also has a twin sister, which also further elaborates one of his themes and one of his traumas, aka his original trauma that I will touch upon later. Another thing that is prominent in this series is the Nameless Monster. And the Nameless Monster is a children's book that was a very big part of Johann's childhood. And it pretty much just summarizes his entire story. And I like how this is a part of the story because I think it's very interesting when authors they include media in their own media, and having that be a part of the main story, a very important part of the story. So I want to talk about how the time setting affects the story, as Johann is like this. When you think of Nazis and when you think of what their ideal person is, it's Johann. He's blonde, he has blue eyes, he's charming, he's smart, and he's like the perfect human being to them. He's also very Caucasian, and what I mean is that he's lighter. He's lighter than the other white people in the show, and you can see that. It's like it kind of makes him stand out. It makes him glow, kind of, which can be kind of scary sometimes, because like it's everyone is shrouded in the shadow, and he's just like glowing because he's so white. But anyways, Johann is, the embodiment of a perfect being according to them. And it is shown in this story because they know who he is and they want him to become the next Hitler. It is stated in the story that they want him to be the next Hitler. But Johann never wanted to be this. This role or this responsibility was made up by them and kind of pushed onto him. But he was never a part of the Nazi organization because they tried to lure him to get him to join the organization, but failed miserably. They kidnapped his twin sister in hopes of luring him out because they know that he is after her. And why he is after her, I am not sure. It was not stated in the story, but it's a fun little mystery. And this is completely different to the way that others treat Tenma. After he's labeled a criminal, which I will not tell you why, because you need to read or watch the story. But after he's labeled a criminal, everyone just believes that he is one. Even the people who aren't familiar with the case, they're like, oh, a Japanese man? That sounds a little suspicious. And, I mean, it really shows how, like, minorities were treated back then. And how, like, Johann is praised and pretty much put on a throne, a pedestal, while Tenma is just seen as this evil, this mass murderer. So this thing with the Nazis also call back to the Bible verse at the start, which pretty much calls back to the idea of worship, because of how the Nazis worshipped Johann, and the beast in this verse probably, most likely, and is referring to Johann, since he is referred to as a monster, and a beast is a monster. There is also a huge theme with Johann and his name, and the nameless monster. The title is pretty much on the nose. Is a monster searching for a name. It splits into two. This relates to Johann and his twin, who are both nameless pretty much, because at birth they weren't allowed to be given names because they were planning to be experimented on. They weren't planning to be experimented on, but like they were given birth to be experimented on. That's a whole other thing, but you know, the person in charge of the experiment did not allow the mother to name the children. And this is shown in the book, where the monster doesn't have any name. It goes around searching for names, but ends up devouring everyone around them, and then itself, leaving it with no name. That's pretty much what the book is about, and it does reflect Johann very well, as the name Johann was the name that Tenma was used to calling him when he was in the hospital. Because he was in the hospital at first. Please watch the show. But after that, he went through various different names, and when he left, people didn't really remember him because he didn't leave much of an impression to them. Which plays back to the theme in the book where the monster just devours everyone who knew of his existence. Also, I want to touch on some of Johann's traumas as a kid. His original trauma, the first turning point in his life, was when he was very young. He and his sister were being, as I said, they were planned to be experimented on. And the person who was in charge of the experiment went to the mother's house. He asked, "Which kid do you want me to experiment on?" Basically, he asked that. The mother hesitated. And back then, the twins were dressed the same. And they had the same voice pretty much because they were both kids, and it's pretty hard to tell them apart. And the mother chose his sister instead to be experimented on. But before she did, she had a sudden movement as she was holding both of their hands. Like both of them, each hand on each side, you know. And she chooses Anna or Nina, his twin sister, instead of him. But that was after a brief moment that she was going to choose Johann based on her movements. And Johann is asking Tenma, I mean, okay, sure. He asks, it's not, okay, actually ignore that part, okay? He is questioning if his mother wanted to protect him, or if she simply didn't know the difference between the two. And if she didn't, then who was she actually trying to sacrifice? And this question stuck with him. And I think the midway of the show, when he was talking to an orphan boy who he has met, he asks, "Why do you think your mother abandoned you? Is it because she didn't like you? Who wanted you to exist? And why do you exist?" I think these words are directed mostly at himself. They're mostly just portrayals of what he thought about this situation as a whole. He thought his mother didn't love him. He thought his mother had abandoned him. And this is probably one of the most glaring reasons why he is this way. Aside from all the experimentation, but I digress. This loss of faith in his mother's love was probably the first turning point for him. And yeah. At the end, his sister reveals that his true plan is to create the perfect suicide for himself, which to her means that he is going to get rid of everyone who knows of his existence, and he is going to get Tenma to kill him. Tenma being the exact opposite of him. But this was not his original intention. Because after he read the Nameless Monster book again for a second time, he had an episode per se. He passed out. He screamed. He passed out. And after that, his mindset seemed to change. He seemed to alter from the original plan and go towards this plan instead. But this plan was pretty much ruined. And is also connected to the Bible verse at the start. Because of the guy who actually killed him. Not being Tenma, but a drunk father who he was trying to make to kill him by threatening a little boy. And the father who saw him was literally drunk, and he shot him straight point blank in the head. And when he was talking to the police, he was like, it was a beast that was threatening my son. A monster was threatening my son. Which obviously calls back to the Bible verse, which talked about a beast. But his plan ultimately failed because 1, Tenma didn't shoot him. 2, Tenma rescued him once again, just like at the start, and brought him back to life. After this, he is in a coma, and Tenma comes to visit him after having a talk with his real mother. He sees Johan sit right up and ask him about the thing that I mentioned before, with his mother choosing between him and his sister. After that, Tenma has this like a waking up moment where he looks back at Johan and he's sleeping. But it raises a question if that interaction was even real, if it was Tenma hallucinating about a conversation he wanted to have with Johan, or it was actually Johan and he was awake. And this question is not answered, nor is the ending, because after a few days, Tenma leaves the room after sitting next to Johan and hallucinating, and comes back a few days later, and Johan is gone from his bed. After that, there's no explanation, and credits roll. I think this is a really good way to end the series. One, because, again, like I said at the start, it challenges your thinking, your interpretation of the character. What do you think he did? Do you think he is out? Did he escape because he wanted to kill? Did he escape and then start killing people? Did he escape to start a new life? You don't know. But it's also up to you to decide. Because the author never gives you a solid answer. Never. It's just up to you and your judgment to think of what the ending could be. And I really like that. I really do. It might be unsatisfying for most people because there's no concrete answer, but I think the thing about it being not solid is that it isn't solid. It's not supposed to be solid because Monster is ultimately a story that you are supposed to think about. It's not a linear story because there are still a lot of plot points that you don't know, even though it is revealed to the characters. Usually it's revealed to the audience and then the characters, or it's just revealed to the audience, but there are some plot points in the story that are just only revealed to the characters, like Johan and his twin sister Anna, or Nina's real name. Like, their original name tended to be given to them by their mother. And that causes a lot of anger in some audience members, but I don't think it's a bad thing because the story is not about finding their names. It's about thinking inside of yourself. Names were what Johan wanted, or was something Johan wanted really badly. He wanted a name, and he went through different people using different names, but nothing fulfilled him. Nothing gave him an identity. Nothing gave him a solid identity, because every time he left, the people thought of him as George freaking Franz, they don't remember who he was as a person. They remember his name. They don't remember him. Names to Johan were useless, and the story thinks of it as so too. So there was no purpose in giving you their names. And to the nature and nurture argument, there is a character that challenges that, but I will not go into it. Actually, I will. Okay, I will. His name is Wolfgang Grimmer. He suffered pretty much an identical thing with Johann, but he turned out to be a good person. Even though he struggled with showing emotion, he was a good person overall. He didn't turn into a mass murderer like Johann, which gives a nice challenge to the nurture arguments given by the show itself. But at the same time, River didn't experience things identical to how Johann did. And that's what really matters. Even a small occurrence can change the trajectory of someone's life. And that's what I think. I think the nurture and nature argument has an answer. And the answer is that nurture is the real cause of how someone turns out. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Bye.